Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis. And before I introduce my guest, I would like to remind everyone you need to support and financially support what you love, whether it is this show, my guests' comics, or corporate media. I personally do not care as long as you are supporting something that you love and that you want to see get made, because without money, the things that you love do not get made. But enough about that, and I don't want to bore everybody with that, as I have with me returning guest, I think either for the third or fourth time at this point, David Whalen from Correct Handed Comics. I get that crystal clear here.
Right there.
So welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, Andrew. I really appreciate it. I always have a good time talking to you. We always talk about good stuff, so I thought I'd come back, peddle my wares, and talk about some cool stuff.
Yeah. You know, I always enjoy having you on. Obviously, we mixed it up. You know, I think we spoke about comics 2 times, and then you taught me how to draw, which is not going well. I'm going to be very honest about that. I am not an artiste. The only artistic skill that I have is being able to talk and sound better than I really am.
That's not true. Just like riding a bike, anybody can learn how to do it.
If you say
and you did
so,
great.
You say so.
You did great when we drew. You did great.
If you say so. If you say so.
I do.
All jokes aside, though, I do want to talk about 3 main books you have because I think they fit Halloween, and I don't want to go through your entire catalog. And they are The Offspring, Hawthorne the Clown, which I just think is ridiculously funny, and The Sock Hop Killer, which is also very Halloween oriented. But before we get into that, I do want to catch everybody up who is here in this interview or seeing it for the first time. What is Correct Handed Comics in the short version? Because if you want to know more about it, everybody watch the first 2 interviews.
Yeah. So Correct Handed Comics is my comic book company, Correct Handed, based on me being left-handed because I heard my whole life right-handed and right-handed and left-handed. So I started making the joke in my 20s that it's not right-handed and left-handed, it's right-handed and correct-handed. And when I started my comic book company about 6 years ago, was looking for names, and I said, that's perfect. There's a great visual, and I think it's a memorable name for a company. So I started coming up with my ideas for different books and one-shots, and always had the idea for the last 30 years or so, had my idea for my ongoing series for The Offspring, and just started building, like I said, building the catalog, building some creator-owned books, and it's going well. But like I said, pushing my wares.
Yeah, and let's just dive into it because The Offspring is your flagship comic, where it is, I think you're only ongoing at the moment, and the others are one-shots or mini-series.
Yeah.
And I think you have 22 issues, or issue 22 is coming out in the next week or 2, or if it's not already out.
Just came out last week.
So I was somewhat in the vicinity.
Yeah.
Someone in the vicinity. But it's brand new, for lack of a better word here. And obviously, when you're 22 issues into a series, you're in the middle of it, or you're starting to get into past the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
And so what is the basic premise before we really dive into it? Because what you've done with it is fascinating in a lot of ways.
So when the idea was to come up with characters that were a little bit more grounded in reality than the superhero characters that I saw growing up as a kid. Now that's a little more seen in the comic book realm, where the characters are a little bit more normal people here, normal people there. But my idea was to have these three main characters, about to be 4 main characters, starting in issue 23. And that's the whole part of the story that we can get into in a few minutes. But these 3 main characters, I wanted them to have realistic problems that really didn't have a solution. They were problems that these characters would need to kind of figure out how to deal with throughout the run of the book, throughout their entire lives. All 3 main characters were abused as children and sent off to an alternative school, where they found out that they have a mental connection to each other. All 3 characters have these powers that they developed based off how they were abused, and they realized that they kind of always found each other throughout the 20 years or so that they knew each other. When we meet up with them in issue 1, they 2 of the 3 are in the most down part of their lives, the worst part of their lives as young 20-year-olds. Sarah's just is about to get out of prison for she did a couple years for B&E. And Vince, at this point, it's not spoilers. We're 22 issues into it. Vince is pretty low and attempting to commit suicide. So these two characters are in places that are not great for them. The third character, Will, is one character that I kind of like to show how people deal with these traumas a little bit differently. Sarah pushes people away. Vince uses his humor to be able to act like everything's okay and to be able to try to like just diffuse situations or diffuse his own emotions, while Will pushes it down, who seems to be the one who's got it most together. But as the series goes on, we start to see those cracks show in Will and how he's maybe showing that he's got it all under control, but not quite as strong mentally as he likes to let on. So it's not just these characters having these pretty horrific backstories to have to deal with throughout the series, but also how they deal with this trauma differently. And that was something that I really wanted to show. The fourth main character, who I've put hints in throughout. We've actually seen her in one of the time travel stories, but we haven't really got to know her very well. She's been kind of in the background and in and out of certain stories for a reason. And now in soon to be issue 23, I start to unveil her backstory and unveil her name is Megan, and unveil her and the trauma that she's been through and where she's been. The three main characters remember her now, but didn't remember her until they started getting these little hints of her being someone that's also connected to them. So in issue 23 that's coming out in January, I start to unroll Megan's situation a little bit more to be able to show how these now four main characters are connected, why they seem to be a catalyst or a magnet for demons and monsters and supernatural, and how they deal with, I like to say it's how they deal with the monsters on the outside and the monsters within.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. And one of the things that I like about this is that I view your book and the first 12, 13 issues as part one of the Offspring.
Yeah.
And then I view this, issues, I guess, 14. And I don't know how long, obviously, part two is going to be, but up to, the current issue 22. And then obviously, hopefully 23, maybe even 24.
It's going to go up to 25. I'm calling it season 1 and season 2. So season 1 is 1 through 13. Season 2 is 14 through 25.
So that's how I view it, because we're getting very much the intro and them dealing with problems and what Sarah, Will, and Vince deal with, and the consequences of action, how they're viewed, a little bit of their backstory and establishing who they are in a lot of ways in the first, 13 issues. And then come issue 14, well, now Megan comes into the picture to some degree, directly and indirectly, and then they go back in time. Yeah. And I think I can say that without giving too much away. Yeah. And they're dealing with some serious issues back in the day. And so what is that like? Because I think it's really brilliant, because it almost allows you to develop these characters, build forward, and then reset it in issue, or part 2 or season 2. Yeah. Where now they get to, I guess, re-experience and have to deal with other problems, and they may or may not have their powers, and you get to almost reset the world, because they're going back like 200 years essentially.
Yeah, that's essentially it. I always loved different genres, and when I set up the Offspring, I wanted to be able to set them up to where they could kind of weave in and out of genres. It can be horror, it can be sci-fi, it can be thriller, it can have human drama with it also. So the really fun thing for me is to be able to weave in and out of those genres, and knowing that issues 14, 15, and 16 were going to be time traveling back into the American Civil War, which it was an era of American history that I have always loved and studied just on my own. It was something that was really fun to be able to kind of plop them down and be able to do some historical fiction inside of this fantastical world of the Offspring. And when they time travel back in time, they are they are realizing that this is the beginning of the realization that they have continuously through the span of the universe been reincarnated over and over and over and over and over again. So they kind of make that realization, and they're trying to figure out why that is. What's the meaning of them going back in time to be able to rescue their friend who inevitably doesn't get rescued. So they have to continue to search for them. They come back to the present and have to search for her the present. After issue 25, I'm actually doing a long arc of different time travel stories where they continuously go back in time and back in time and back further and back further, and we start to realize why they keep going back into time. And then I think the ending of that epic time travel story is going to be really cool and really fun, and I can't wait to get there.
Yeah, and even to sort of go into that too, because obviously they don't rescue their friend. And she winds up getting taken by, I guess, I think, what is it, like the Eternity Man or the
Eternity Man? Yeah, they fail, and that's one thing that I really try to do in the books. Is it's not Superman, where Superman's going to succeed. They're dealing with things that first of all, they're not superheroes, while they do have abilities. They are dealing with things and issues that they've never dreamed of having to deal with, and going back in time and trying to rescue their friend, and then having it all kind of blow up in their face was something that I really enjoyed, dealing with the emotional trauma of we failed again. Like they just kind of keep beating them up and beating them up and beating them up until they kind of break. And that's kind of where we are in the story right now. They're road tripping across the United States, and I try to give 2 issues to each after a big story arc, like the time travel story, which was 3 issues. I try to give each character 2 issues to be able to kind of spotlight on them. So the last 2 issues of the last 6 issues have been a spotlight on each individual character that kind of helps develop their psyche, helps develop their character, helps develop why they handle situations the way they do. And maybe, and always trying to get a little bit of growth in the character also, to be able to say, oh, this is why I do that. What am I going to do to maybe not react that way anymore in a negative way for whatever it is? So it really is for me just about showing that steady growth of these characters, but knowing full well that they will never be 100% okay. And that's okay.
Yeah. Let's even go into this too, because this is something that's tricky about indie comics in general, is that you obviously want to have character growth.
Yeah.
And you want to have, the ability to develop characters, and DC Marvel can give, a whole, 6 issues to Superman to develop him. Whether that's canon, not canon, where it fits into the story, who knows? Yeah. But obviously, we as readers get that, even if that Superman's not in the canon book, it still exists somewhere in it, or it influences us as a reader in some way. But in indie comics, obviously, people don't get the ability to develop characters that same way, or even give them a spotlight issue, mostly because it's expensive to produce something, unless you're producing 100 issues series, and the real payoff for you as a creator is that you have a huge amount of content, and so you need to develop that so that when you have those big arcs, they make sense. And that you might be taking a slight loss on issue 17, but the whole point is that that the series overall is going to produce a greater rate of return. And so it's very tricky, because I don't know many series that take time to spotlight an individual character in I guess sequential order, I think is the right way how to say it, versus doing a side one shot. Sure. I know people who have done side one shots of a character, did 36 pages, but they didn't run it. They ran it as a Kickstarter, but they didn't run it as number 5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that was really, from the get-go of my genesis of the series, was to take these 3, soon to be 4 characters and really get to know them. My plan is to, and I think we've talked about this before, my plan is issue 50 issues. And I know what the last page is going to look like. So I've got the plan all the way through the next 50 issues. Approaching issue 25 for me is amazing. For me, just personally, it's an amazing accomplishment to know that I can think back on that 17, 18-year-old kid who developed, who got these characters, kind of the ball rolling on these characters, and always having in the back of my mind, always kind of improving the story as I went through my own growth as just a human being, to be able to finally say, okay, now I think I'm ready. Now I think I'm ready to really tell this story, and to be able to know that come hell or high water, I'm going to get to issue. If I have to, I always make the joke that even if my hands get chopped off, I'm going to find a way to put those pages drawn, to get these characters and to end their story. If I have to learn how to draw with my feet, I will. And that's really to think back on that 17-year-old who developed these characters, and know that now as a 40 blah 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 something person, it's actually seeing the light of day, and that people are enjoying it is really rewarding to me, and I can't believe it, and it's great.
Yeah, and to go even further, and obviously I had Tyler Carpenter on, and Tyler is a writer and an artist, and he does The Girl with the Mega Fists, which is a manga, which I'm looking forward to picking up. I backed it on Kickstarter. It looks like an awesome book, and he draws it himself and he writes it. And obviously, I think that's a real advantage in comics, if you can write something and then you can draw it, or even if you necessarily can't draw it, but you could letter or you could ink something, anything that you can do in addition, because it lowers cost.
Yeah.
And when you lower costs in anything, you could produce more of it, or it doesn't create such a financial stress on it. And so maybe, you can push out 5 issues that normally would cost somebody, 3 issues per se, if you look at it in an economic way. And so what is that like? Because that's really helpful too, where I don't know if you could do 25 issues in a very short amount of time if you had to hire an artist.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be able to. I think that, when I was younger, seeing artists and writers do an artist be also a writer, and a great example is Dan Jurgens, who was Superman artist and writer for many years.
Tomb Raider too.
Yeah. He's doing something else. Tarzan. He's doing the Tarzan stuff now, which I want to pick up. I haven't had a chance to, but when I started reading his stuff, and I started realizing, being a very creative child, teenager, whatever, and not really having the outlet of drawing, but then realizing, oh wait, I can write too, and really kind of diving into the hows and the nuts and bolts of being a writer. It was really eye-opening for me. So to my advice for if anybody ever says, hey, you create comic books, and what would you tell an artist, who wanted to create comic books? I'd say learn how to write. And if there was a writer who wanted to create comic books and they said, what can I do? I'd say learn how to draw. Because having those extra skill sets, exactly like you said, is nothing but a benefit. And even thinking that if you're the writer and thinking, I'm not the greatest artist in the world, it does not matter. Your book is your book. The way you want it to look is the way you want it to look. There are billions of different styles out there. So even if you think your style is a little shaky or messy or whatever, that style is telling your story. And you will, and the fun part for me is to see us, especially for me, was to see how from issue 1 to issue 22, how I've grown and changed, how I have developed certain skills or continue to develop those skills to be able to tell my story. And it's something that I hope that I never stop learning. I always make the joke that I didn't really become a lifelong learner until after I got out of school. So to be able to continue to learn and grow, and being somebody who pretty much does everything. Every once in a while, I'll have somebody come in and help me with colors, which has been amazing. The guy who came in and did the 3 issues for the time travel to the American Civil War, Chris McCauley, who works with Bram Stoker's son, who does Dracula. They do the Stoker universe. He just messaged me out of the blue one day and said, hey, I really like the Offspring. I love what you're doing. I love independent comics. What do you need? And I said, oh my gosh, I could really use a colorist for a couple issues. And he said, you got it. Send me the pages and I'll color. And I said, Are you joking? That's amazing. Thank you so much. And he brought me back those pages, and his pages was exactly what I needed for the Civil War story, because while it was similar to my coloring style, there was a little bit more grit. You know what I mean? To what I had, that really helped to ground it as a different era, and it was perfect for what
Let's even
needed
talk
to happen.
about that. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I used to have an editor on, my old show, which eventually is going to fuse into this show. It's going to be interesting how I do it. It's not that it's just time is the issue of doing it, but having an editor was very helpful. It sped up the entire process by about 7 hours.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm not saying it wasn't ultra expensive, but it wasn't cheap either. But I'm glad that I did it for about 30 episodes, because it helped speed up my production and it alleviated stress. And I'm a strong believer that even if, you're a writer who can draw, it might make sense to go hire somebody even still, just because they might be able to get it done faster or to alleviate stress, or you could really focus on what you're better at. Yeah. So I am not a good editor. I do not like editing.
Me neither.
It's not fun in editing audio or video. It's a pain. And so I would rather hire somebody versus learning that skill, but I've done it. And I'm a strong believer that you should at least know, and before you ask somebody to do something, you should do it. So it's kind of like sales. You should not ask your employee to go knock on a door if you haven't done it before.
Yeah.
Or you're not willing to do it.
Yeah.
And because the second you understand how it's done, you're better for it. So if you're a writer and you drew a book, but you realize you're not a good artist, you know how to give direction to your artist to make their job easier.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've had some great. It's always good to get another set of eyes on what you're doing, because after you've looked at it for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months to be able to create this thing, you're seeing it in your brain the way you want it to be on the paper, but it might not be exact. It might not be that way, right? So I've worked with a couple great guys. Ryan Crow is a guy who has been doing my edits for. He's a great guy. We've worked on some independent stuff here and there in the past, and he has really come in and helped me get a little focus to what, like, I'm like, oh, I want to do this and this and this and this. You're like, okay, how does that help the overall story? I'm like, oh, it doesn't. It's just fun. And I said, well, he said, don't do that. I said, you're absolutely right. I can hold on to that. There's been times where I've pulled out whole storylines and said, I can hold on to that for something else. Right now, let's continue down the path. Patrick Daniel, who actually we mentioned Hawthorne the Clown, was the writer of Hawthorne the Clown that we collaborated on, being able to create that. And that's one thing that I really like doing. I love being able to, people come in and say, I say, I need this. What do you need? And they say, well, I've got a script. Can you draw it? And I say, of course I will. Give me some edits. I'll give you some art. And we're good. We're good to go. And that's happened a few times where
this is the problem. Really, nobody in comics understands that. Nobody ever asks me, hey, Andrew, can I come on your show? What do you need?
Yeah.
I might say, look, I'll get you on my show, but I need my logo a little bit reworked.
Sure.
Or I need, here's my logo. Can you have her holding like a lightsaber because it's Star Wars month?
Yeah.
Or could you have her holding a pumpkin? And it might take you 3 seconds to do it, and it would make me thrilled. And it's like, nobody ever does that. Nobody even says, hey, man, what do you need from me? Like, it's so weird, and I don't get it. Like, I don't get why nobody ever bothers to ask me that. But because I know people do it with edits. I know people do it with other things. I know people trade things all the time, and nobody trades things with me. I'm so
message received. We'll talk about a trade. Message received. We'll talk about that trade. I'm happy to help you. That's why we're here, right? To help each other out.
I just want somebody to offer. Like, if somebody said, dude, next time you got to come, I'll just hug you. I'll be thrilled. Like, the bar is so low, guys. The bar is so low.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, man. You and I can talk off camera. I would love to be able to help you out with some stuff. Whatever you need, just ask me. It's great. I'm looking at your logo right now. I'm like, yeah, I can tweak that. We can figure that out. I work as a graphic guy. I just want somebody to
just be like nice to me. Like, it's not that hard. It's really not that hard, guys.
Just be nice to you, please. Just be nice to me. I love it. Yeah, I worked as a graphic designer for 10 years. If you need some punch ups on your logo, I'm happy to help you. I
But
love doing that kind of stuff. I don't get a chance to do that kind of. I love it when I create a new like one shot. I get to come up with a logo for the title and all that kind of stuff. I love it. I don't get a chance to do it as much as I'd like, but I did it for 10 years as a graphic designer before I became a teacher. And it's fun. I love it. It's fun.
so that's my whole thing, is that, like, because I know people do that, and I know people trade, and it makes sense in a lot of ways because everybody needs something. And I think it's just good business
Yeah.
where, this is something that I've traded with people in eBay, where I know people who specifically do things in eBay and sell certain books, and I sell Zenoscope books. So they have somebody who's looking for a Zenoscope book, and they direct them to me, and I don't touch Dynamite books, and all they do is sell Dynamite books.
No.
So I have a client who wants a Dynamite book, and the only thing I say to the person out for business is, say, don't F it up. That's it.
Yeah.
Because, and the person says the exact same thing to me, because if I recommend somebody and that person screws it up, it doesn't look good for me. But I digress. I think it's brilliant. But getting back to the Offspring, because obviously it's really amazing, and you're going into the end of season 1 or the end of season 2, or as I like to call it, part 2, because there's going to be a part 3 and a part 4. But what is this like too? Because you don't crowdfund.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too that's interesting, because, and there's nothing wrong with that. I want to make that crystal clear. Just because you do not Kickstart a book or Indiegogo a book or crowdfunder a book does not mean that it's not indie. I think that that's a common misconception. I think people think that, it's small press. I don't know I view small press more like a Titan or an Ablaze.
Sure.
To be honest, I actually think Titan is more closer to Zenoscope than not. But I think that small press is above indie. And I think that you can self-fund an indie and run a company and be an independent comic book, but not have to crowdfund. So what is that like for you too? Because it's a very different path than everybody else.
Yeah, it's not that I'm against crowdfunding in any way, and I think I've kind of got my eyes on it to see if it's something that will work for me later on in the future. But right now, because I'm a one-man band, the only thing it really costs me is time. So to be able to create the books, and quite frankly, crowdfunding for me right now would probably slow me down, because it would be a focus on one book. I could crowdfund issues 1 through 4 in a trade, and have all my one shots as incentives and all those things that you give out, and that's something that I'm really looking into. But those crowdfunds are a job in of themselves, right? It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to be able to do that. So that's a lot of time and a lot of effort that would take me away from actually creating the story that I'm trying to create.
Because so you can talk about that, because I know people who are killing it without crowdfunding.
Yeah.
And they just built their audience, they built their email list, and they don't want to touch it because Kickstarter takes 9%. And they're like, I could take that money, run an ad, or I can go and do something or go to a con. And if I'm going to raise anyway $5,000, why do I want to give Kickstarter $500 when I could take that $500 and just put it directly towards marketing? Or put it directly towards the book, or I could put it directly towards network building, or I could put it directly towards, something else that is related to the book, or I could buy like a new iPad to draw on.
Yeah.
And I can, and all of a sudden now I have more equipment, or I could buy new software or something like that, because that's something that I'm looking at right now, is that I would love to be able to, run essentially a funnel without Kickstarter, and maybe Stripe will have to take 3%, but you're not going to get around a payment processor. That's a hard one to get around. But I just think that it's interesting, and also there's all these rules, and then you can't run another one, and then fulfillment could be a pain, and then you got to do media versus just putting it out and then doing the media around it. It seems it's tricky because it's its own world, and it's a very unique way of making comics, I feel.
Yeah. And it's, if it works for some people, it works for some people. I think that for me personally, it's not something I need to do, because I don't have to worry about paying other people. it's me. I'm paying me. So if I go to a con and I sell $300 worth of books, in a day, I'm good. I'm funded for the next, couple months to be able to get all that stuff done. I sell most of my books at cons and online. So to go onto something and say, hey, even if you're crowdfunding for $5,000 to be able to move forward, that's while I'm not going to scoff at $5,000, it's not a means to an end for me. I don't need to do it to be able to produce the books. I would rather focus on producing the books than producing a crowdfunder. Does that make sense? Because it's not something I need. I'd rather get to issue. Yeah, I'd rather get to issue 50 in the next 5 years and then crowdfund the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like be able to say, okay, I'll crowdfund the trade of issues 1 through 2, 3, and 4, and then I'm going to crowdfund.
For you to crowdfund an omnibus.
Yeah,
it would almost make sense because then it's a big deal. And I mean, I made this joke before that if I ever write an ongoing series, I'm going to crowdfund issue 1, and then I'm going to release issues 2, 3, 4, and 5. Not on crowdfunding positions, and I'm going to crowdfund issue 6, and I'm only going to make issues 1, 6, and then issue like 10 or issue 11 on crowdfunding. So now it becomes an event. I like the concept of events. I like the concepts of drawing attention and creating exclusivity. Now you could catch up in issue 6 on issue 1, but you're not going to be able to get issues 2, 3, 4, and 5 on that thing. And the reason why is that it makes it a reason to come. It becomes an attraction. And I think, and I'm a big believer in attractions versus, if you're doing issue 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 all on Kickstarter, well, I'm happy you're doing it. If I like your start, I could back you and support you. There's also not a reason for me technically to back issue 1 if you're going to be back there for issue 2. Yeah. And you're going to offer issue 1 up on issue 2, and you're going to offer issue 2 up on issue 3. Like, it's not an attraction anymore. Yeah. It's not exclusivity. It's not, you're not giving me a reason to buy today. Sure.
And then, that's to your point, that's a great selling point for me also. When people say on, social media, hey, show us your Kickstarter, and hopefully people will back it. I try to, not every time because I don't want to get in the way of people's Kickstarters, but I'll pop on there from time to time and say, hey, I'm not asking for money to make the thing. I've already made the thing. If you got $4, go to my website, click on the link. You can buy the thing. It's already there. And if you want more, it's all right there for you. And if you want to contact me and say, hey, how about a freebie of a one-shot? I'll send you a digital copy, freebie of a one-shot. Yeah, of course. I'm down with that. I've done it many times, and I'll continue to do it because, trying to get people to, because I hear all the time, oh, I gave money to this Kickstarter, but I never got the thing. And, I haven't heard hide nor hair. You'll hear from me because I've got it already made. It's done. All you got to do is buy and read it.
I just backed the Kickstarter. I'm not going to get it for a year because the 6th volume of Pat Chan's Destiny New York isn't going to be available for a year. I bought all 6 volumes because I'm actually really stoked, and I kind of owe Pat, and it's good politically for me. I got no problem for saying that. Not the U.S. politics, but common politically, it's smart.
Yeah, sure.
I want to make that crystal clear before anybody gets any ideas here. But he sent me, and he sent, I think everybody who backed all 6, the first 5 digitally of the volume. So I get to read that now. I now have about 700 pages of comics to read because it's already done. And so by the time I get that stuff, the only issue I'm going to read is volume 6 because I didn't read volume 6 yet. But it's very helpful, I feel, when I feel like I have something to hold me over. Yeah, it's where I'm going with it. And I think it's crucial. But again, Kickstarters are their own thing. But even to go further into this, I mean, you produce how many issues a year of your book?
I try to get 5 done. And in between there, I'll get a one-shot in between there just to scratch that itch of another genre.
Because this is the thing that's crazy about that too. And I think it goes back to this point as well, where there are people on, Kickstarter who can only do 3 issues a year.
Sure.
And let's be realistic. I mean, Marvel, DC, Image, those people crank out issue after issue after issue, and it kind of sucks. And I'm sure you feel it too when you back something, or you're like, man, I have to wait 4 or 5 months for issue 2 to come out. You lose momentum in a lot of ways, and it kind of sucks because I'm not so concerned about that person making money, but I want more of your story.
Yeah.
We live in a binge society. And even if, I mean, obviously, if you're producing 5 issues, that's what, every 10 weeks?
Give or take. Yeah, give or take. Yeah.
So if I know that I'm 10 weeks away from your issue versus saying, I'm 12 weeks or even 15 weeks, that's a big difference. And you say, oh, Andrew, it's only 5 weeks. But the fact that you're getting out an extra 2 issues versus the average Kickstarter person, or even one more issue, you're getting out 20% more. I think that says something as well, because I think we all as fans want good content. I don't even think we want good content. I think we want content that's average at best, to be average or above. We want it done at an affordable price, and we want it done timely. I think are the 3 main things that we want as people. I don't need a great book. I don't need a good book. I want an average book that is cheap and is going to get to me on time.
Okay. I've got the on time thing. I've got the cheap thing. And I think I've got the above average thing.
But you get where I'm going with this, right? Because you hear horror stories and I hear horror stories where I'm waiting on a bunch of books that are long overdue on Kickstarter. I have 3 books in comics that are long overdue. I have 2 books that haven't matured yet, and I have a book that's 3 weeks late, which is not a big deal, and it'll get to me in the next 2 weeks. So I'm not angry about that book. But and then I have a D&D book that is a dumpster fire, for lack of a better word. And I'm just gonna say it. You do not need me to say which D&D book on Kickstarter it is, because there's only one that fits this description. It's a rough one. But my point is that this is something I think that I give you credit for, because you're getting people what they want, and you're doing it at an affordable price, a good product, and you're getting it to me on time relatively.
Yeah, I try. One of the things, like issue 22 just came out, like I said, last week in October, and if I wanted to, I could get issue 23 out in December. But my thought process, because I've got it thumbnailed, I've got it started, pencils have started on issue 23. But my thought process is, right there, the holidays, I want to start pushing the trades for people who want to give gifts to people who enjoy comic books. My trade issue, a volume 5 trade of these issues that I'm working on now, the 6 issues that I just, the subsequent issues before issue 22, I'm going to put the trade out in November. So my idea was, or my thought process is, stop the original content in October, push the trades for people that want to catch up, and then second, third week of January, get issue 23 out so people can have a chance to be able to catch up, to be able to, and know that every 2 months you're going to get a new issue. Somewhere in the summer, it might be a little bit span of time in between, because it's summer. I'm trying, spending time with my family and all that. But knowing you're going to get at least 5 issues in a year is always my goal, and having those strategic places to be able to stop, to give people a chance to catch up, and for me to be able to catch my breath or put out another one shot.
Yeah, and then even going further into that, because you're pushing up the trades. I mean, obviously you have 4 trades. I think you have an omnibus as well, which, and I don't know. I don't think you really handle any of that. I think you do it through Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it works out really well for me, because I can print books at my leisure. I know a lot of people, their whole idea, and people might be listening to that going, that guy's an idiot, that never works. But it's worked really well for me to be able to get 10 or so books, to be able to go to cons. And I know when I need more books, and I know when I have books that I need to get, to be able to get to send to people, physical, actual copies. So to be able to buy 5 issues of this, 10 issues of that, to be able to always have it prepared for cons or for whatever else I might need, has worked really well for me. And if people, like I said, if people knowing full well that if they buy it from Amazon, it's gonna be on their door in 2 or 3 days. And
this is one of the things that I talk about, where I have a Redbubble t-shirt and I don't handle any of it. And I don't make, if I bought the t-shirts myself, I could print shirts for like $4 on it, and I could buy a bunch of shirts. I know exactly where to get it. They're cheap. I know how many I need to buy to get it at that price point. And I know that I can sell for like $22 plus shipping, or I can get free shipping and still make a lot of money. But I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to do any of that. So I would rather make $3. But guess what? Redbubble ships it to you. They give you 16 different color options. They give you 3 or 4 different shirt options. You can put it on a mini skirt, technically, with Redbubble, and I make $3-4 on it. But guess what? I have no work beyond me basically hiring somebody to do the artwork on it. So that is something that I think is really, really interesting, because that's how I view it, is that I'll make less money, but it's fulfilled and I don't have to fulfill it. And that's what it seems with Amazon, with your book. And I also know that, let's say the book comes completely damaged and a truck ran over it, Amazon's going to take care of the issue.
If it's a 24-page one shot, it costs me less than $2 for them to print it and bring it to me. If it's a trade that I sell for $20, it's less than $5 to get books and have them ship it to me. So if I'm buying 10 trades at $4, but I'm selling the trades for $20 at cons, to me it's kind of a win-win. The sales double for me, because I know that, and again, it's a known thing that it's gonna come to your door, and like you said, exactly, if something happens, you get a new one, and it's great.
And I think people don't understand that, the key to a lot of this is making a little bit of money and also having convenience makes sense. And it's also, I mean, I don't know about you, but I got a lot of stuff in my house. And after a while, you say, oh my God, where the hell did I get all this stuff from? You wake up one day and you're like, oh my God, I used to have a lot more space. I used to be able to see the carpet in my bedroom, and now I can't. It happens. And as you get older, you tend to accumulate more things. And that's why I don't want to have shirts in my possession. I really don't want shirts in my possession, because it's just going to take up room. And I don't know when they're going to sell. I would rather say, hey, look, you just buy from Redbubble and you're good to go.
If you know within a month and a half of where you'll need them and when you'll need them, you order them up, they get there, you're good to go.
I don't know. I'm not even going to do that. I'm just going to have, if I'm ever at a con, I'm like, here you go. Here's my shirt. You can buy it right now. Type in what you need. It'll be sent to you, because it's probably going to be cheaper for everybody involved. And you get to pick your complete customization. Like because I don't know, if somebody wants a pink shirt, I don't want to print up 10 pink shirts. And it's a little bit different in comics when you have one product that fits everything. But for me, 16 different shirt colors, you can pick whatever you want. That's why I always tell people, if they want to buy a shirt from me, seriously, go to Redbubble, guys, because you're going to get exactly what you want. If you want a red shirt, you're going to get a red shirt. If you want a blue shirt, you're going to get a blue shirt. If you want a black shirt, you're going to get a black shirt. If you want a pink shirt, that's wonderful. And so that's how I view it, is that it's completely customized. And it saves me and everybody's happy, including myself, because, again, you get to pick what you want. But I digress. I think what you do is fantastic on this.
Yeah, they're great little time saver things like that that have helped me really streamline, and I love it. It's great.
And obviously there's a lot of other things going on. Obviously, we're getting to the point where obviously we're going to be hitting issue 25 in 2023 in your series. And there's a lot of stuff coming on, and we're going to discover a lot more stuff. And we're going to figure out why these 3 young adults, now almost 4 young adults, are basically going back further and further, being reincarnated, who's pulling the strings, and a variety of other stuff. And it's going to be interesting how that all plays out.
I'm super excited because at the end of the time travel story, I maybe I shouldn't say it out loud, but I'm gonna. So the end of the time travel story, each little tiny arc of time travel is 2 issues. So there's going to be 8 issues in the entire arc, where again each character gets kind of a chance to shine in this time travel story arc. The last time travel story arc is a 1 issue, and I think it's going to be really different. And I want to say, I don't want to say why it's going to be really different, but I think it's going to be something that I've never seen before in a story similar to this kind of story, 20 somethings with superpower story. And I quite honestly, I really can't wait to get there. I think it's going to look so cool and it's going to be so different. I can't wait for people to see it.
Oh man, there's a good book that's about time travel that really tests the idea of it, and I haven't read it yet. It's on my to read list, but it's all about if you kill yourself in the future, does that mean you can change your future? And it's such an interesting question, isn't it? Because if you kill yourself in the past, you would cease to exist.
Yeah.
Unless it's an alternative line. But if you kill yourself in the future and you did something bad in the future and you knew you were going to go to jail and then you broke into the jail and killed yourself and in the jail, does that mean that you killed your future and therefore your future is undetermined now when you go back to your time? It's a great question. It's a great question. Such an interesting question. It's such a deep thought question. And me and my friend had a 3-hour discussion about that in a bar once. It was a great night. It was a great night. A lot of drinking happened too that night, but that's not the point.
It's the best way to talk about time travel. Drinks in one hand, the DVD of Back to the Future in the other hand, right? Let's talk about time travel.
It's great. It's great. And then we put instant coffee in the microwave, but that's not the point.
Nice.
Great joke. Fantastic joke. But anyway, I don't want to push too much further into this because you've got a lot of stuff going on with it, and it's going to be interesting what you do with it. And I'm looking forward to it. But I do want to briefly talk about the other stuff and the sock hop killer. And I know we spoke about that before. And don't break a girl's heart before a homecoming or prom. That's all I'm going to say. It's usually not a good idea. And that one is perfect for Halloween in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I've grown up in the 80s. I loved slasher flicks, Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm. I loved them. And wanted to do like an homage, my own take on that kind of character. So female was always the way to go for me. I was like kind of switching genres and saying, if all those slasher guys are men, I want a woman doing it. I want a woman doing this job. So, and really, I've always enjoyed the 50s just as a time period. Great visuals in the 50s. So just kind of started playing around with that idea and talked to a buddy of mine who does another podcast, the Everything Horror Podcast, Paul Dulski, who really just knows everything there is to know about horror. And I called him up one day and I said, hey, I've got this character, and sent him some pictures and said, I've got a character, I've got a basic idea, but I need more. Him and I had been talking here and there, and we within the span of 10-15 minutes, we had way more than 24 pages. It had just kind of all just blew blood out onto, into the air of all these great things we would do with this character. So he wrote it up, and so we kind of co-created, and I drew it, and super happy with the way it came out. It's black and white, so you can't be afraid if it's like a young kid who likes slasher stuff too. You're not afraid of too much blood, because it's black and white, right? But it does have that feel of Friday the 13th. That feel of constantly being stalked, I think. And I being a fan of that stuff, it was great to be able to come up with something that I think has potential to be more. Paul's actually working on issue 2 right now of that, so kind of a sequel to the Sock Hop Killer. And he's thrown me some ideas, and I've thrown some ideas back to him, and it'll probably happen, I'd say, in the next year or so that we get another issue of the Sock Hop Killer, and I'm excited to be able to see the how that character develops. as it goes.
And then even to go further into that too, because obviously, it's Halloween right now. It's that month. And what is that like to have a book that is extremely topical
Yeah.
that probably does well during this time? And people are looking for stuff like that. And not
Yeah.
saying people don't like horror all year round, but
Mhm.
obviously, I had Dan Schmidt on and he has The Worms That Crawl In.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's very much a horror book and really, really well. And I asked him to come on purposely during October because I know that's when his book is really hot.
Yeah.
And so what is that like? Because I would imagine this is sort of perfect in that vein too.
Yeah, it's great, especially being a one shot that's not too expensive, and people, who want to kind of see different versions of that thing or that genre, but kind of turned on its head a little bit. Yeah, when October hits, there's a couple books of mine that I love to push. And Sock Hop Killer is definitely one of them. Like I said, if you like slasher 80s flicks, stuff like that, and you like those demonic type characters, and you would ever want to see like June Cleaver or Donna Reed, that kind of 50s type, character, kill a whole bunch of kids or teenagers, kill a whole bunch of teenagers. Let me rephrase that. Then Sock Hop Killer is the way to go. Like I said, I love pushing that stuff in October because I get a lot of great feedback from people, and people buy it and tell me they like it, and I love it.
There's a great concept. It's a great word. It's called an evergreen.
Oh, thank you.
So one of the things that I've learned as an interviewer, and my mom wrote a book, and it's a cocktail book, and it should do well over Christmas because people are always looking for gifts.
Yeah.
Developing an evergreen in anything is always useful. Like there are interviews that I've done that every year will produce like 400 or 500 plays without me having to do any work. And there's certain groups, voice actors, certain elements, certain shows, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, Dragon Ball Z voice actors. Those interviews always produce views.
Nice.
Because people want to know that, and they are what are known as evergreen content. And this also falls in that vein in a lot of ways. And I think it's very, very important that, not saying that you should write an evergreen or have that full intention and write a book purposely for that, but if you can write and thing that falls into an evergreen and you would like to be a little smart at business, it might help you in the long run.
Yeah.
And especially if it's a one shot where you don't have to do much with it beyond that, or you can or you don't have to add more to it at a later date. But if you get a few sales every year from it, that's doing much work because the property itself sells it, if that makes sense.
That's what I love about the one shots. It's not only always there to be able to push for people who want to see it. Like it's this time, certain people want to see slasher stuff, so push it. But it's also for me kind of a bridge to some of my maybe longer term stuff, like a bridge to the Offspring. So people are like, "Oh, this looks interesting, but 22 issues—that's a lot for an independent creator." So
It's
to be able to have
commitment.
Yeah, so be able to have those one shots for people to be able to see, my style, and people to be able to see, how I tell stories, and see if it's something that they want to maybe make a bigger commitment to. And that's one of the reasons why I did the one shots, just because I wanted people to be able to have that bridge, to be able to have that opportunity to say, 22 issues. Let me see what else he's got going, and hopefully that'll be the catalyst to them enjoying the Offspring as well.
Let me ask this because I'm actually curious on it, where somebody, and I'm now getting into micro content. I'm gearing up for micro content for this show. And so I'm well aware that somebody might not want to watch an hour and a half interview or an hour interview, but they might want to watch a 4-minute clip.
Sure.
Or a 2-minute clip to be like, okay, cool. How'd you get into this voice's character, for instance? And so now what I'm figuring out, and I'm curious how you feel about this, is that somebody might say, look, I want to support indie, but I don't want to spend, $150 for this entire series. Nothing against you, but I'm not that diehard of a fan, but I do want to support an indie creator. Oh, you have a one shot, or you have 3 one shots for $12. Cool. I'm okay with that because I now know that I'm not committed. If I buy issues 1 through, or even, you're going to have, 9 to 10 trades, even at, $20 a pop, it's still a lot of money. And so somebody might say, look, I want to support an indie creator at a con, but a one shot might be a cheaper way to do it.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, and I completely understand that mindset also, because in our business as indie creators, um, oftentimes you'll get 3 issues of something and then it'll disappear. And I understand that because it's hard. This is hard, but this is not
Oh,
easy to do.
no shit, Sherlock.
It is difficult, right? And with that being a thing that happens, I completely understand people who, I read the big 2 or the big 3, counting Image, but I struggle with indie because I read a book and I love it, and then I never see issue 2. So that's again one of the reasons why I really like to focus on just creating content, because I want people to know that I'm going to get to 50 issues. You are going to see the end of this story come hell or high water. And that's, for me, that's just the goal as the creator of this thing myself. Not only do I want to be able to finish it for people to be able to buy and read it and enjoy it, but I want to finish it for me, for me to be able to see it, for me to be able to say, I did it. I did that thing. I finished a story that I started when I was 17 years old, and I did it, and I love it. And I'm so glad I did it. Now what can I create? now what?
We're gonna dive into your 50 issues and a whole big question, discussion at some point. I am looking for a third person. I have somebody in mind, but I got to reach out to them and we got to figure out a good time. But we're gonna actually talk about this, with my new monthly show called The Question. And basically, we're gonna have a very intricate panel discussion and a very open discussion. And the first question for those who are interested is that, do we deserve an ending as fans? Sure. And obviously I'm bringing on, somebody who is a super fan, a couple that's a super fan. Obviously I'm bringing you on the opposite side, and, and then somebody else who may or may not be somewhere in the middle of myself. And I figure we're gonna have a very open, honest discussion about this issue and even diving into it. And I don't think there's any wrong answer, because I think it's a complicated issue. Sure. Because when you say deserve, it always is a trigger word, in society, and I think it's complicated. I really do, but we're not going to get into that right now. I do want to talk about Hawthorne the Clown, though, because I love Hawthorne the Clown.
Well, thanks, man.
There's a particular character from One Piece that I absolutely love. He's my favorite character, Buggy the Clown from One Piece.
Oh yeah,
Hawthorne. I think Hawthorne is like Buggy the Clown. And Buggy the Clown is brilliant. Buggy the Clown in One Piece is the greatest person who should never accomplish anything, but apparently he's a warlord. He's a 4 emperor. He's like the head of an organization that hunts the Marines, and he has lackeys of Sir Crocodile and Mihawk. Apparently, it's brilliant. It's so brilliant. Where he is like, and he hates Luffy, but then he's like almost an ally with Luffy now, because Luffy saved him by him impelled down. Oh, it's epic. It's the greatest story ever. Awesome. Buggy the Clown, and he's a warlord with Shanks, who they were on the Roger ship together. Oh, it's epic. But Hawthorne is so much like Buggy the Clown. Oh, good. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's again my editor who had to leave. He had some things, so he couldn't really edit books. But he came back to me and said, "Hey, do you want to do this thing together?" And I said, "Of course I do." And it was a great story, and I'm a big fan of the visual of clowns, right? So you think of like things like It. So trying to come up with something that was not just a generic kind of visual for a clown, you know what I mean? Everybody has a picture of a clown in their head. I wanted something that was a little darker, but still fun, but still scary, but could still make you laugh. It was really like teeter-tottering on that wire of the visual for this character. And when I read the script, I don't think I said his name yet. Patrick Daniel, who does some fun stuff. He's got some stuff coming out that I can't wait to support. When I read the script, I said clowns, and then I also said vampires. Love it. Let's do this. And it was 24 pages of just fun of creating the visual for this character, and being able to give him a proof of concept. To be able to have him something that shows, because he wants to do other things with the character also. And I said, hey, man, you give me a year and you've got a second one. yeah, I'll do it. Let's do it. So it's something that I thought was really fun, and it was a chance for me to collaborate, which I really love to do. To be able to have somebody that I know we already work well together, to be able to say, "Here's the script," and somebody who's also open. Hey, do you mind if I adjust this panel a little bit, or what do you think if I do, in the dialogue, do this little thing? And it's either no, don't change it out. Okay, great, no problem. Or it's, oh yeah, I love that. Let's do that. It's that collaboration. It's that chance to be able to kind of back and forth with somebody that I really love enjoying, especially being able to give back to somebody who has given to me and done some editing for me. To be able to do that was really fun, and to be able to, again, just continuing to create content, continuing to be able to tell these fun, interesting stories that I think are different than what's out there from anybody else.
Yeah, and let's even talk about that too, because obviously, I mean, I immediately made the connection to Buggy the Clown, but I'm an anime guy. It's One Piece, and obviously, what Hawthorne's doing, the clown is brilliant. Where basically, it's not a fan of terrorists taking something that can benefit him, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's hilarious. It's funny. It's dark, and there's no good guys in this entire thing, which is great too. But even to go further into that concept and where I'm going with this, what is this like to do stuff that exactly hasn't been done, or it's now starting to get done, but like exploring the psychology of people who have powers and even how their powers and them getting beat up, also taking, a concept and throwing it upside down its head, because at this stage in comics, a lot of that is now starting to come out. But it has taken a very long time for it to come to the surface. And I hate to say this, but I think comics has two C-word problems. Cash flow, and I do think creativity, but not creativity as in producing and writing books, but a lot of stuff is generic. I mean, I go through Kickstarter and I'm like, man, I know exactly where your book's going.
Yeah.
I know where your book's going, and I'm not going to name names here, but I know the exact blueprint of somebody's book to the T. And I can probably, if they died, I could probably finish their book in a very similar vein. And I probably can continue it, because stuff is being built on top of stuff, on top of stuff, on top of stuff. And I'm going to throw something out there where I'm going to throw out 4 properties that are somewhat well known. Super Folks. I don't know if you know Super Folks. Did you know you know the book Super Folks, right?
I'm vaguely familiar with it.
It's a great book. It's Grant Morrison's favorite book.
Oh, yeah?
Then there's Astro City, which is what Super Folks was based off of.
Yeah.
Then you had Tiger and Bunny, and then you had My Hero Academia. And the reason why I bring up those 4 things is that My Hero Academia is a derivative out of Super Folks. And then Super Folks was done in like the 70s as a novel. So I mean that's my whole thing, is that. And now I feel like everything's a derivative, but it's not enough of a derivative. And so I feel like you're at least attempting to create a separation out of the norm. But what is that like for you? Because it is tricky now, I feel, in comics.
Yeah, as an artist and having an official degree in the arts and all that fancy stuff, one of the first things you learn and to not worry about is that there's nothing new. If you thought of it, somebody else has thought of it as well. Somebody else has not only thought of it, but created something along those lines. So walking in, going, thinking, yeah, this has similar aspects from other things that you've seen, whether it's a superhero movie, which is always going to have similar, I guess the word is tropes, right? Always going to have those similar ideas, those similar concepts to them. I think really, for me, when I go to a superhero movie or really any genre, knowing that, I'll pick another genre just for fun, a Western, you're going to see those tropes that you want to see in a Western movie, TV show, whatever it is. For me, the tropes, getting to the tropes, and then how you handle the tropes, and then how the character handles the tropes, and then how that character is different from other characters that have handled that trope. Does that make sense? So you can have a trope, you can have something that has been done a million times, but if you see somebody new doing it, or they handle it in a different way, or their reaction to that idea is a different reaction to it. For me, that's where it gets interesting. The character, not the trope, right? The character, not it's the way the character handles it, not the incident itself, right?
Yeah.
Because you do a Western, there's going to be a gunfight. But how can you change that to be able to make the character interesting inside of something that everybody's familiar with? And for me, that's, one of the fun things about it, the Offspring, where I do weave in and out of genres. It's not 100% about the genre. It's not 100% about the monster. People have seen monsters a million times. It's about how the characters react to the monsters, how the characters deal with the time travel element, monsters, supernatural, their own powers, their own past, whatever it is. And that can be handled a bazillion different ways. And oftentimes ways that people don't even think of. We always think, oh, I know how I'd handle that. But, the character handled it a different way. To me, that's what's interesting.
The character decided to renegotiate with the writer.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's been times where I have, sat down and said, we've gone through a whole thing and then realized that's not interesting enough. It doesn't have enough. There's not enough for me to say that I took that idea and changed it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't just want it to be just a rehash. So there's been times where I said, I'm going to put that to the side and I'm going to go to something else. And then one day I'll be riding my bike with my kids, or my wife and I are walking, or where I'm sitting, watching my daughter, at her swim meet, and I'll go, that's it. That's how I can turn it. And my wife usually knows when it happens, because I'll go, that's it. And she'll go, what's a idiot? And I'm like, I got it. Don't worry. I'm just thinking in my brain. And she'll know that I've just figured out what I'm going to do in that story. So it happens at least once a week. So it's that thing where to push it, to keep pushing it and keep pushing it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think because I feel that very few things every year are new in comics.
Yeah.
And I think it's tricky. And I mean, I don't think it's an art problem. I think art has gotten way better. I think styles have evolved. But obviously, I think that stories are, I think the writing is actually falling behind the art right now. I really do. And I think part of it is also that I think a lot of writers have gotten lazy. I really do believe that. And I think some haven't, but I do not think the writing has evolved the same way art has.
Yeah.
But I make my money on eBay through art. I don't make my money through story. Because when Zenesco produces a sexy bad girl cover that's limited to 350 copies, and everybody wants that book, nobody's buying it for the story. They're buying it because an artist did it, and the character looks amazing. The art is there, and then it's exclusive. And there you go. And I do all right with that. So it's a good business if you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing. I mean, Warren Lau, that guy can draw, and that guy, unbelievable. The gun honey covers that guy does. Oh my gosh. I have two of them, and let's just say they go for a nice pretty penny right now. So yes, they're not for sale, so don't ask. No. There are people who know I have it, and they've asked. People have offered me like $250 to $300 for those two covers. It's a $60 cover, guys, for the pair. They sold out really quickly, and with every penny of it, and it's not for sale. But anyway, I digress. And I am curious in that vein too. Before I give you a chance to self-promote, where do you think the industry's going? Because comics have been weird, and crowdfunding has been weird. Indies have been weird. People who were killing it on Kickstarter are barely getting to their goal and maybe doing $100 over. And there are people who have gotten 10 more backers on their second issue despite putting in work. And it's a tricky landscape. And even the way I feel and how I've changed my habits, I used to spend a lot more money buying comics, and I pulled back.
Yeah.
And I'm reading a lot of stuff on Comixology digitally and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
where do you see it? Because you're a little bit outside of the
Yeah.
crowdfunding game, but you're very much in the comic, production game and producing books and making things happen. And I think you're
Yeah.
doing what, like 7 to 8 issues, maybe even 9 issues a year through
Hmm.
both the Offspring and then some one shots.
Yeah. Between 6 to 8, I'd say. Yeah. I think that for comics, what unfortunately that I see in my humble seeing of the world is that comics went from being in gas stations and Kmart and Walmart
The
and
supermarket with little
yeah,
Johnny.
you
Johnny
could
goes with
go
his mommy.
anywhere. You could walk into a hardware store and find comics in the 80s, right? And in the early 90s. Now, unfortunately, while they have tried in the recent past to be able to get like those 100 pages from DC and Marvel, they tried to get them into Walmart. I think they still have them in there, but I don't really think they sold very well. I think that unfortunately became kind of this niche where it's just this small little group of people now that go to comic book shops to specifically buy comics, while in the 70s, 80s, well, all the way back to the 40s and through the 80s and into the early 90s on some level, you would go, mom would take you to the grocery store and you'd see a Mighty Mouse comic book and it'd be 5 cents. And you'd say, Mom, this will keep me out of your hair for a good hour. We got 5 cents for this, right? And Mom said, yeah, I got 5 cents for that. Pick it up. Let's go ahead and buy it. And it was always like readily available right there for sticky fingered kids who wanted to, who crave that kind of visual visual storytelling. And I don't think now, like I live in a very rural area, and there's no businesses that sell comic books. You go to Walmart and those 100 pagers are there, but they're shoved underneath where the Pokemon cards and the baseball cards and football cards and all that stuff is there, but they're kind of shoved underneath, and you gotta know they're there to get them. And I think that that's the biggest problem, is that it became, you're a comic book person instead of comics are for everybody. Comics are everywhere. This visual storytelling is for everybody. You get from Mighty Mouse to Archie comics to Spider-Man to Superman to romance.
I'll throw something else out there. I'm
Yeah,
reading right now The Black Dahlia, which is
great
that
stuff. Yeah,
messed up,
crime,
it's a
horror.
messed up case,
Yeah,
everybody out in LA.
yeah,
For those who want the basic premise, The Black Dahlia is the story of a woman was basically dumped and cut in half, and then her legs and her body were standing right in the middle of like a street.
yeah.
And at
Wow.
first, people passing by, they thought it was dirt, and it became one of the largest, and I think it's still unsolved.
Yep.
What happened?
Mhm.
And she's known as the Black Dahlia,
Mhm.
and it's a very interesting graphic novel. It's very interesting, the case, and nobody knows to this day. And it's a true crime book. So if you're into true crime, I mean, this is the book for you. It doesn't matter that it's a graphic novel. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's a really well done true crime graphic novel that will put the hairs on the back of your neck stand up.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when in the, what was it, the late 50s, early 60s, where they started putting all these, restrictions on, like banning this kind of story. You can't have this on the cover. You can't do that. And it really narrowed the field for what people could do. And a lot of creators got creative. A lot of publishers got creative on what they were publishing, but it really just kind of,
a magazine. It was great.
yeah, and but it really kind of narrowed into superheroes being the only game in town for comics for a long time. I think now you're absolutely right. It's starting to open back up again, because people are starting to realize now you can do whatever you want. There's no comics code authority. There might be people saying, "Oh, I can't believe you wrote that down in a comic book." Well, then don't read it. Then don't read it. People who try to ban things should not. I always tell my kids,
it didn't work for Congress.
Yeah,
It didn't work for Congress with Twisted Sister. It didn't work for a lot of things.
Yeah,
and it's still not working. And I'm a big it's no secret. I'm a big card member of the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. I'm a big fan of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. That doesn't mean you're not free from consequence, but I'm a big fan of the manga case that happened with Canada. Like, and when the thing happened in Tennessee with Mouse, I said to all these people who got angry, I said, where have you been for the last 10 years?
Yeah.
Welcome to the table, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell my kids all the time that if you hear someone's trying to ban a book, go read that book. Go read it because it's important, because it's got things in it that is crucial to humanity. That's the reason people are trying to ban it, because it makes them uncomfortable, or they don't like the message for whatever that message is. So if anybody tries to ban something, read it. I'm very, like I said, I live in a very rural area, but my kids, where they go to school, it's public school. And one of my son's teachers, they're doing now a banned book lesson, to where each student picks a book that has been banned in other areas in other parts of the country, and they read it, and they stand up and they talk about why the book was important and what the story was about, and why they think people are trying to ban these ideas. And it's amazing. And I think it's something every single school should do, because the second you tell kids or tell people they shouldn't be reading something, that's the second they should be reading it.
To a degree. I don't want when I have a kid I have a daughter or a son in kindergarten, they're not reading Mouse just yet.
Well, of course, it's not, but it's not
when they're in fifth grade.
It's not the industry's job to raise kids. It's the parents' job to raise the kids. So knowing the appropriate time to be able to unfold that stuff in front of them is a parent's job. And yeah, of course.
So that's my only restriction, is that I don't want a school to also force the banned book.
No, of course not.
Because that's crazy, and there's a fine line between that. But I don't.
Well, isn't that what a book report is? Forcing a kid to read a book, right? Isn't that what you're forcing a child to read a book?
But I hear what you're saying. I don't
Yeah.
want books like Fahrenheit 451 to be banned.
Sure.
I don't want books like 1984 to be banned. I don't want Gatsby to be banned. I don't want, what's the Holden's book? Catcher in the Rye. That book shouldn't be banned. That's a great book. So many good books.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I personally don't believe that any book should be banned. If it's got things that are inappropriate for a school library, no problem. Put them in. But public libraries have every kind of book you could ever imagine. And they're readily available.
I'll give a great example. I read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That book in 12th grade is borderline. There's things in that book that are inappropriate, but guess what? There's things in that book that are brilliant, and it's one of the best books that's ever been written.
Clockwork Orange. Clockwork Orange is a great example of a book that I think has a very important message. Still to this day, the book's 50 years old, 60 years old, and it's still has message that resonate right now about conformity, about drugs, about government interference, about.
Oh man, I could one up you on a Clockwork Orange.
Yeah,
Battle Royale is a Clockwork Orange meets Lord of the Fly.
Awesome.
High school students on an island. They got 3 days to basically kill each other till there's one survivor, otherwise they all die. Awesome. And brilliant. It's one of the only mangas that was reviewed in Playboy, and Playboy has never ever reviewed a manga, and they reviewed them. It was a national bestseller. The New York Times was back in 2000, then it became a manga, and it was brilliant. And so I decided to be the smart kid in 10th grade English class, and I read that book while I was reading Lord of the Flies.
Yeah.
So that I had a very different interpretation of Lord of the Flies. I was like, this is kind of tame. And my teacher did not appreciate that statement.
Yeah.
Did not appreciate that. I'm like, this is a little too tame for me. But I digress. But anyway, I think it's fascinating. We could have a whole discussion on banned books too. Yeah. But I enjoy reading things that I'm not supposed to read. I've been reading things that I have not been supposed to have been reading for years.
Oh yeah.
I grew up.
I think there's a good argument to say that there's nothing that you shouldn't be reading. right? Because even if it's not your bag, man, even if it's not your bag, that's okay. But having that knowledge and having that understanding of other viewpoints is the thing that helps us as a society create empathy, right? So if it's about something that you personally don't do or care about or whatever, reading that story on some level is the thing that, or understanding another person's point of view is the thing
Yeah.
that creates empathy that I think in today's society we are very much starting to lack.
Oh, I think that, I was speaking to another comic creator today through DMs, and I said I just think that a lot of people in comics, and I think collectively across the board, are not grateful. They're not grateful. I mean, just to be very honest, and it's not to go too much into it, but I think a lot of people do not appreciate media. I think a lot of people do not appreciate when you're on a show and you're being interviewed. And I was being interviewed yesterday, and I was beyond thankful for it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a real problem where I think people are just not happy and they're ungrateful. And not to bring up a dirty name, but Andrew Tate, where Andrew Tate is loved and hated. But he said that if your car broke down, shouldn't bitch that your car broke down. You should change the narrative and say, well, I at least have a car to fix. And I understand that you could say, motherfucker, my freaking engine just went out. God damn it. You could scream for an hour because it's annoying. But you also have to realize, saying, wait a second, there are people who do not have a car.
Yeah.
People bitch about going to their job. And I think saying, well, at least you have a job to go to. Look, I don't want to wake up tomorrow and go to my job. If I had $10 million, I would not be going to my job. But I'm happy that I have a job.
Yeah.
It just sucks when you wake up at 6:30 in the morning and you're tired, and then you got like an hour and a half commute. You don't want to do that, but I'm happy that I have a job.
Yeah, it's always perspective. I think that and bring it up. So there's a perspective all the way on this side. There's a perspective all the way on this side, right? And if you are listening to somebody, like if you're over on this side, and you're hearing somebody talk on this side, and there's nothing in there that you can't understand on some level as being maybe something that people would feel, if facts line up and all those things, then if there's nothing in between that you can ever find ever in any conversations you ever have with those people who are on either side of this, then both people on that side, if they can't find anything, lack that emotional awareness of empathy and understanding for other people's viewpoints. There are people that, I say something and they're like, oh, I 100% disagree with you. I said, okay, that's fine. Tell me why you disagree with me. That's, and this was funny. I was thinking about this the other day. The guy, I'm trying to remember the guy's name, the Change My Mind guy.
Oh, Steven Crowder?
Yes. So for me, the idea is not, if I would ever see him, whatever he was, saying, hey, change my mind about, for me, it's not about changing his mind. It's about, if it was him and I having a conversation, it would be about a dialogue to where we both could have on some level an understanding of both sides of the issue. So not about changing his mind or him changing the other person's mind, but about having an understanding of both sides of the issue and finding a way to bring it not here, but to bring it right here so that it could positively affect as many people as it possibly could.
So Bill Maher just had Dave Rubin on in his Club Random podcast. Yeah. And what he said, and I'm going to touch upon something that's a hot topic issue. He said they were talking about abortion. And he said, I understand the people who want to ban abortion. They think it's murder. I disagree with them, but I understand their logic. I understand their argument. Understanding somebody's argument is bringing it closer down.
Sure.
So I can understand that somebody says, I am pure X, A, B, C, and D. Right? I am pure DC Comics to make it, a little bit nicer and not
fun it up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And somebody says I'm pure Marvel, but if somebody says I think, Marvel's more realistic, I think Marvel's always had better artists, and now they're presenting 4 different facts, and they also say, look, I think that Marvel, the Avengers were, going along the lines of representing a more, diverse group than the Justice League. You're now actually presenting an argument. And you're bringing it downward, and then somebody responds and says, look, though, Superman's A, B, C, and Batman's this, and Wonder Woman's this. And then you get into that discussion.
Mhm.
And also somebody says, I like Marvel because it's more lighter, it's more humorous. And somebody says, but DC's darker. And now you're actually getting the conversation down to real points.
Yeah.
Person trying to convince. But again, it's I think that's one of the biggest problems right now, just in comics and collectively in the world. But I think that people in comics in particular, they don't appreciate their backers. I don't think they really appreciate their backers well. I don't think that they appreciate media. And that's what I'm seeing as a podcaster. And I'm privileged and I'm a little biased, but I think that a lot of people won't say thank you at the end of an interview. It's very weird. And I'm like, and even how people ask me, and even how when people don't even know how to say, hey, I'm super swamped right now, hit me up in like 2 months. Like, people don't have good social skills in comics. And that's the other thing too that I think is a big problem. And I think that's why we're seeing problems on Kickstarter right now. Their algorithm changed, and I also think that a bunch of people say, I haven't been treated well. And when I backed your book the last time, I'm not so keen on backing it again.
Sure. Well, I think, and I agree with you. I don't think it's just in comic books. I think that social awareness is something that is getting lost a little bit in society. My wife and I have had conversations. You walk into a restaurant and or not a restaurant, but a gas station, and you put your thing down to buy it. And 15, 20 years ago, the person behind the counter would say hello or good morning or how are you or whatever, just a greeting of some kind. But now you put your thing down and they ring it in and they say $5 and you hand the $5 and then you walk away. No, have a good day. No, anything like that. And I get how that is, because it annoys me from time to time. Just a little bit of social niceness. You know what I mean? But I also get that person behind the counter who's working at that gas station or whatever it is, they're how can I say it without sounding like a jerk? They don't get paid to smile at you. Does that make sense? While it's nice and I would appreciate a smile, and it's not going to stop me from smiling at them and not going to stop me from saying, have a great day. They don't have to. It's kind of like when we're talking about, men and the difference between men and women, and a man will say to a woman, you'd be a lot prettier if you smiled, or you'd get a lot further along if you smiled. She does not have to smile at you, guy. The guy, she does not have to smile at you. She is not obligated to smile at you at all. If she is your employee and you are the boss and she's doing the job, or he's doing the job, whoever it is, that's the job. Get the job done and get it done right. Now, if part of her job is socialization, of course, hopefully they'd be good at being social with people.
Or to smile at a customer.
Yes,
to a customer.
On some level. But a person, working at, McDonald's or a gas station or whatever, what can I get for you? They don't have to have the beaming smile. What can I get for her? What do you need? Give me a couple cheeseburgers. Great. $3. Great. Your cheeseburger's coming up. Go. And that's for good or bad. It's where we're trending on some level, but
it's interesting because I go to Starbucks, right? And it's the exact opposite. So, it's weird. Like, whenever I go into my local Starbucks, they'll say, hey, how's your day going? And so, what is, I think that maybe their manager, or who knows, maybe it's a policy in Starbucks to do that, because guess what? Maybe also that manager realized that, hey, look, let's try something with tips here. You're more likely for all of us to get a bigger tip if you throw us money. If you say, hey, how's your day? You put somebody in a better mood. They might give you $1, but you're dealing with 200 customers. That could be $200, right? And then 5 days later, that's $1,000. There's maybe 8 employees. You'll divvy it up. It's an extra whatever it is. It's an extra $110. And all of a sudden, what is, somebody says, well, $110 makes me want to smile. So, but I digress. This is all way far off.
Way past what we were talking about. That's all right.
Really interesting. We've completely gone through socialization here. That's my third class that I will be teaching. How to socialize as a comic book creator.
How to smile and say, have a good day.
Yeah, right. Like, just scream it out of con right from your table. Just get a megaphone if you're not loud enough. Just
what I love, there's a guy, I think it's on the TikTok. I have to put the in there because I'm an old man. on the TikTok. There's a guy who cat calls with a megaphone, but his cat calls are very like positive cat calls. Like he's saying very positive things to men and women. And he's like, "Hey, you in the blue shirt," and they look over like, "Oh no, what's this jerk gonna say?" And they say something very positive, like, "Oh, get out of here!" Like it's really funny. It's very like, again, turning the social awareness around a little bit to be able to make it how kindness can help your day move forward in a positive way. It's just funny.
Oh, it's great. But anyway, I do want to give you a chance to self-promote. So where could people bother you now that we may or may not have gotten you canceled? That's the whole purpose of this show. If you could survive my show, you're cancel proof.
Perfect.
But no, seriously, where can people find you, bother you, buy your book, check out what you do, not check out what you do, send criticisms or any other concerns or things they got going on, or if they just want to say, hey, what's this about? Can you send me a freebie?
I need to say out loud, I love criticism, but bring it on. If somebody wants to comment in my comments or DM me about criticisms, I love criticisms. I've been an artist for 47 years, and any artist will tell you criticism is just part of the deal, just part of the gig. So you love it, you hate it. Tell me why. I love it. I'm a big fan. Feedback.
Yeah, no. So obviously where people can find you, send that all to social media, that fun stuff.
Yeah, so correcthandedcomics.com, links to all my stuff. There's a talk to me button there to be able to add me in, to be able to send me any kind of criticisms or comments or concerns or positivities that you want to. All social media, the Facebook and the TikToks and the Instagram and the LinkedIn and there's one more that I'm missing, Twitter, though. Can't forget Twitter, super important. But if you on any of those search engines or searches on those social medias, put in correct-handed, I'll pop up a big left-handed hand with correct-handed written on it. That's me. So yeah, and you can find links to all my books at correcthandedcomics.com.
Well, I think that's perfect right there. And obviously, I'm just going to keep saying it because I've been saying it forever. You have to support indie. What that means is that if somebody has a web store, they're at a con, they got a Kickstarter, a crowdfunder, you gotta buy their book. You gotta pledge to their book. However they sell it, you gotta pick it up. If you want it digital, you want it physical, you gotta pick it up. It makes a difference. And then furthermore, you have to follow them on social media, because that's the other thing too. Following on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, whatever else that person is on, also is a big deal. And so it does make a difference. And then commenting when they release things, or they release a piece of art, or they release a cover, or they're running a poll and they want your feedback. All that stuff matters. So obviously that's something that people need to do. And if you like something, you have to support it, is where I'm going with this. So I recommend everybody does that. As far as I'm concerned about me, obviously, my social media is down below. It's Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Pop Anime Comics. I appreciate everybody who subscribes to any of my social media and wants to comment, wants to interact with me. I'm very friendly. My DMs on Twitter are open. All my Facebook stuff is open. And you could feel free to shoot me a message on anything. So please subscribe to my stuff and watch my boatload of interviews. I almost have 600 interviews. There's an interview for everybody to enjoy. And if there isn't an interview that you have enjoyed, believe me, I will produce one that you will. I also have a comic book investing class coming. It's going to be $40 initially on Udemy. It's going to be 18 to 22 hours, which I think is a great price point. $40 for 18 to 22 hours. I'm about 65% through, but I've been taking a little break from it because life is hectic. So be on the lookout for that. And there's going to be a bunch of promo codes throughout all these episodes, dropping it down to make it even cheaper, because I believe in financial education. I will say this, though. If you're concerned about, I'm going to tell you what to buy, I'm not telling you anything to buy. We're going through the basics of comic book investing. So it is a skills-based class versus a buy this book now and you'll do fine class. Because I believe that you could teach a man to fish and he'll eat for life, or you could give him a fish and he'll have a nice meal for that day. And I don't want to give you a fish. I want you to learn how to actually fish, or in this case, buy comics and make real money doing it, or at least attempt to. And I could tell one other thing. You might take my class and hate it. And my solution and my response to you is, you're welcome. Because if you take my class and you say, oh my God, this is not for me, you just saved yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars screwing yourself up, because you realize that there's a million ways how to make money in society, and buying and selling comics is not for you. And so you'll spend $40 to realize that that is not a good choice for you. And it'll be the best $40 you ever spent if you do not want to pursue that. But I digress right there. And I'm going to give you the final word.
Me, Andrew, thank you so much for having me on again. This is number 4, if I remember correctly, right? Number 4. I love it. I really appreciate you having me on and let me peddle my wares. I appreciate the kind words about all my swag and my creative stuff. And I appreciate the conversation about real life stuff also. It's always a fun time to come and talk to you, and I hope to do it again in the future.
Yeah, any time that I have space, anytime I have space.
Hardest working man in one of the hardest working men in podcasts right here. 600 interviews, man. That's insane. Congratulations.
Yeah. Most of it is in the last like 3 years. It's just ludicrous.
That's awesome.
But enough talking about me, because this is a perfect place to end, and that is a wrap, everybody.